As I continued to play, I found that Super Mario Bros. 2 asked me again and again to take a leap of faith, and that each of those leaps resulted in my immediate death. This was not a fun game to play. It was punishment. Undeserved punishment. I put down my controller, astonished that Mr. Miyamoto had chosen to design such a painful game.
This is a quote from likely the first American to ever play Mario 2. He was a humble warehouse worker, and higher-ups in Nintendo of America valued his input because of this. He was often given piles of Japanese games to give his input on how well they would appeal to the everyday American. Mario 2 never would get the chance to appeal to the everyday American, because it wouldn't be released in the States for another 21 years. We don't talk about Super Mario Bros. 2 all that much. I mean, you've obviously heard about it a little. It was released just under a year after the first. It wasn't all that impressive because the only differences were slightly different textures. The levels were all far more difficult than the original, to the point that releasing it in the US would be a straight up bad PR move, so they rushed together a ROM hack of a completely different game with Mario characters on top of it, and then released that in the West as the Mario 2 in America, and then got called Super Mario USA and released in Japan. That's where general knowledge of the game ends, because that seems to be all there is to say. Second verse, same as the first. But for anyone who actually played Mario 2, that's actually all there is to it. Yeah, they hit the nail on the head with that one. It's honestly pathetic as a sequel, and it's probably even more of a reason why it wasn't released in the West than the difficulty. The game is, and I didn't know this was possible from a mainline Mario game, boring. Conceptually. In practice, it's actually really fun. I mean, it would be hypocritical of me to say the game itself was boring after beating it more than 15 times and playing it at least 12 hours, and it would be even more hypocritical of me to say the game wasn't very good because it was formulaic when I'm the biggest new Super Mario Bros. Defender alive. I'm a firm believer in the adage that games don't need to be revolutionary to be noteworthy. Not every game needs to reinvent the wheel. Mario 2 is simply more Mario, and that alone is enough to make it enjoyable, allegedly. I mean, that's how it would seem from the outside, but we don't talk about what's in Mario 2 all of that much. What makes it more difficult? What are some of its more daring choices? What are some of its more stupid choices? Join me today as I look at Super Mario Bros. 2, not as a sequel, but as a game. There is a definitive question in this video. Is Mario 2 good? Is it a good game on its own, separate from its influences and its influenced? Is Mario 2 good or bad? It's a very basic video, but because of the significance of this game, it's necessary to start from square one. Super Mario Bros. 2 begins with 1-1. Obviously. I feel like I'm going to get shot for even saying that, but it's important. People have been writing about Mario 1-1 for decades because of how it teaches you to play the game. How does Mario 2 1-1 teach you how to play Mario 2? In game design, there are two kinds of difficulty: conceptual difficulty and mechanical difficulty. If you remember my Counter-Strike video, this will sound repetitive, but if you haven't, you can never see it again. It's unlisted now. Fuck you. Conceptual difficulty could be described as mental difficulty. Mechanical difficulty is the difficulty of pressing the buttons good. Every game falls on the continuum of these extremes. Pure conceptual difficulty is puzzle games and turn-based RPGs. Pure mechanical difficulty is rhythm games and trying to get to the good part of the visual novel. The question here is, where does Mario 2's 1-1 fall on the scale to try and find out why Mario 2 is so much more difficult than Mario 1? Let this be a case study. I mean, first we have to talk about Mario 1's 1-1. I'm sorry. Okay, so you start Mario 1. You've never played a video game before, you start on the left side of the screen, you naturally want to go right to fill the empty space, so you press the right button on the controller. Oh no, that Goomba killed me. He looks awfully squishable though, so you press the buttons on the controller until you find the one that makes you jump, and wow, you ricochet off that brick and you got him. What other things can I do with this jump power? I'll hit this brick and oh no, a new mushroom-shaped thing. Same shape as the other thing, I'll jump on that too. Wow, now I'm big. Time to jump over this obstacle. Time to jump over this taller obstacle. Oh no. Perhaps if I hold the button, I'll jump higher. Mission successful. I could obviously delve deeper, as many people have, into the other aspects of this iconic stage. The movement patterns of the enemies, the introduction of the fire flower, the perplexing invisible one-up. Mario 2's 1-1 isn't like this. Obviously, it assumes a familiarity with its predecessor and seems to revel in this fact. The first enemy isn't a Goomba that takes one stomp, but a flying Koopa that moves unpredictably and takes 3. The first mushroom doesn't spawn in a location that will automatically feed it to the player, but instead in a tiny little cage that the player has to jump into, or time their jump to gain the reward. Taking the extra health requires the risk of being stuck in a 4-block span with a Koopa Troopa. It's actually better to avoid than defeat because if you hit its shell, it will start rapidly moving. Either that, or this requires the mechanical mechanically difficult task of timing your jumps and instilling an understanding of the physics. This builds within the player an understanding of the mechanics, not of Super Mario as a whole, but of Mario 2, The Lost Levels. From the beginning, it is clear that this is a game that plays in risk and reward, dancing on the edge of death. There are considerably fewer power-ups in Mario 2 than Mario 1, and it might be better to play the game with the smaller hitbox that Little Mario provides. You know what, let's make a list. 1. Mario 2 is more difficult because it offers less leeway for mistakes. But because of the live system, in all cases, failure is never permitted, and you're much more likely to die from falling into a pit than from hitting an enemy anyway. Enemies are actually bonuses in this game, often making jumps easier if you bounce off of them like this is Donkey Kong Country. But it's not. This came out 5 years before, and the enemies are not designed to be jumped upon. The physics are completely inconsistent and impossible to twist to your advantage. So, 2. The platforming in Mario 2 is more difficult because of the layout of the jumps, the precision necessary to execute the platforming sequences, and the inconsistent controls. This introduces another aspect of difficulty. In addition to the linear scale of conceptual and mechanical difficulty, we can create a compass, fair difficulty versus unfair difficulty. This goes back to the foundation of games as a medium, evolving from the arcade, which evolved from board games. Someone tells you the rules, and then you're able to play the game. Most traditional games are perfect or complete information games, and the evolution from that to video games was kind of rough. We need games to telegraph their information to the player, and Nintendo, as one of the oldest game developers, has developed their own methods of this. Famously, Mario 1-1. This singular video game created modern game design, and with it the understanding that every new mechanic and new danger must be telegraphed to the player in a safe environment that demonstrates what it does. Mario 2 also follows this design tradition, with the second obstacle in 1-1, the poison mushroom. You just got a mushroom less than a second ago. You try to collect this new mushroom, ow, but you're still alive, and you know to avoid that kind of mushroom. Now, avoiding those mushrooms will be a fair mechanical challenge. The rest of the level is, in reality, about as difficult as Mario 1's 1-1. But it appears more difficult because it is presented in a way that makes it more precarious and makes you feel like you're in danger. This doesn't come across in a post-Mario Maker world, but the floating brick platform was pretty novel stuff. The rest of the level is pretty simple. There are more enemies than there would be otherwise, and not any more power-ups. With 1-1 complete, we can go back to this video's central question. Is Mario 2 good? Is it a good game? What makes something a good game is if it accomplishes its goal, and Mario 2's goal, in this case, is to be straightforwardly fun. Coked out bliss, the joy of accomplishment. That's what makes video games fun, right? Having an impact on something. That's what the meaning of life is to a lot of people, and that's what makes video games such a compelling and addictive medium. The immediacy with which your actions have consequences, good or bad. They are microcosms of the entirety of the human experience. Opportunities to train your reflexes, critical thinking, moral integrity. Mario 2 released before we understood these foundations of game design, because it was the follow-up to the game that created the most iconic video game genre. The shoes that Mario 2 had to fill were so monumentally huge, the mantle that was being passed down so crushing in its weight, it didn't even get released in America unless as explicitly a bonus in its predecessor's remake, its title of sequel being removed out of embarrassment. What is the goal of a platformer game? What makes platformer games fun, and as the sequel to the first true platformer, is Mario 2 fun? To find what makes platformer games fun, I will bring your attention to the greatest game ever made, Celeste. Yes, it's the best one, fuck you. Celeste is a game about climbing a mountain, and it's fun because it's a metaphor for depression, or gender dysphoria, or grief, or addiction, or loneliness, or being Canadian, or baking a strawberry pie. My point is that the game's titular mountain is presented as an obstacle for the protagonist to overcome as a metaphor for her personal issues. Diegetically, she says this out loud, and the mountain itself has magical abilities that make it reflect your inner self. It's not a very subtle game. The genius in its story comes from the way that the audience is able to map themselves onto it, and beating the game becomes a goal for them as well, something that the player desperately wants to achieve to prove to themselves that they can. Platformer games give us something to strive for, accomplishment. I would argue that that's what made Mario 1 so impactful when it came out. It didn't go on forever. It definitively ended. Mario 1 was embarking on an adventure, and each time Toad said our princess was in another castle, our resolve to finish the journey was strengthened. Obviously, there's a through line between Mario 1 and Celeste. They're both extremely difficult. Celeste is mostly mechanically difficult. There is conceptual difficulty in mapping out the path through each level, but then there's executing upon it. It's very balanced in that way. Mario 1, on the other hand, is difficult almost entirely mechanically, but it has lives. Upon dying just 3 times, you're banished back to 1-1, and you get to practice the earlier levels until you're almost flying through them. You can feel a measurable increase in your skill because of how much faster you're able to blast through the early levels. If you put real effort in, you're able to skip them entirely with warp zones. Both of these games are fun because of progression, impact. That progression is measured in different ways, elevation or number of levels cleared per attempt, but the thing that makes platformer games so fun is progress, and this has been true since the first one. The question, is Mario 2 good, is actually the question, is Mario 2 fun? And the question, is Mario 2 fun, is actually the question, does Mario 2 instill in the player a sense of progression and accomplishment through its mechanics? And does the moment-to-moment gameplay make the player feel this through their actions? And the answer to that question cannot be solved because we've only looked at 1-1. 1-2 in Mario 2 follows the same pattern as Mario 1. Mario works with a sense of whimsy and wonder in the world. Everything has eyes and smiles and everything is colorful and fun. In order to create a sense of wonder, Mario 1 starts its second level by plunging us into the sewer. The Mario brothers are plumbers, after all. This is a piece of characterization, and more importantly, it introduces the player to new sights and sounds, reassuring the player that this is a varied world. It really makes the game feel like an adventure when the landscapes that we trek through are varied. Mario 2 can't accomplish this same trick because it has all of the same environments as its predecessor. It has to remix the same assets in a unique way, and it does this by breaking the fourth wall. That's right, Mario 2's second level actually begins with Luigi soft-locking the game, and then the entire game is just his sprite taking up the whole screen, and then his eyes start bleeding, and then you have to go into the game's files and delete him before the level starts back up again as normal. And then we have a single jump. This jump needs a running start, and you are given 1 block as a startup, which is impossible. Not really, but it demonstrates immediately how the player needs to have an understanding of the game's mechanics, the way that Mario accelerates when he runs. In Mario 1's 1-2, getting on top of the bricks at the top of the screen was always a little secret, a fun thing to show off to your friends and how you enter the first warp zone. You are immediately bypassing the game's internal rules and demonstrating your mastery over the game by getting in front of the UI that seems untouchable. In Mario 2, this is immediately expected of the player, and if you undershoot the jump, you're actually rewarded with another warp zone to World 3, although it can be tricky to get without finding the invisible brick. A secret needed to reach a secret. The player is expected to know all of the game's tricks, and the game utilizes this to the fullest extent that it is capable of. Princess Peach was captured in the last game. She's captured again. There is no suspension of disbelief. There is no veil of fiction. This is Mario 2. You know what you're getting into. Expanding on that theme, there's a warp zone in the same place as Mario 1. Jumping over the final pipe leads to another area, but it's more dangerous than the same location in Mario 1. It's not a free warp zone, and it only sends you to World 2. Unless? We already know that this game likes to play with risk and reward. Maybe the extra pipe preceding the warp zone has something. After some semi-difficult platforming, we come face to face with a brick wall. This is an impassable wall, inside a secret within a secret. We must get past yet another secret, multiple invisible blocks. This takes you to World 4. Mario 1's Warp Zone gave you the choice between jumping between Worlds 2, 3, or 4, but in Mario 2, the closest thing there is to a level select requires a painstaking effort. The question here is this fair? Fairness, as I've said before, is another axis on the graph of conceptual to mechanical difficulty that is harder to accurately measure. Let's look at another platformer game, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. It should be fun, according to what I laid out earlier. It gives the player a palpable sense of progression and purpose. My first playthrough took 9 hours when the game came out when I was 11 years old, and even today I vividly remember listening to calming music and getting back to where I had fallen from way quicker than it took to get up there the first time. Another game about climbing a mountain, it has also been experienced in this sort of projection sense of the player mapping their own self-worth onto their ability to beat this computer game. But most people don't beat Getting Over It. They say, "This is bullshit, unfair garbage." Some people don't feel a sense of accomplishment when they finally reach the top of the mountain because it didn't feel like it was fair. That's what makes difficulty fun or not fun. How much trust we place in the developer's choice to put it there. Playing a video game, consuming any kind of art, requires a very extreme amount of trust that the art is being made in good faith, that it has something to say. The greatest condemnation we can put on a piece of art is that it was driven solely from laziness or mockery. The hatred that comes from conservatives regarding Duchamp's fountain is motivated from this idea. It either isn't saying anything, or what it is saying is that we're stupid for being in the same place as it. In reality, it was making fun of people who said it didn't say anything. The message was specifically the reaction that people had to it. Mario 2 is a very funny game. It is, in a way, communicating with the player already because of its role as a sequel. Mario 2 knows that you know what it is, and it has used that for level design in a positive way, as shown before, but it can also be used in a way that is just straight up funny. People hate getting over it because they think that it is mocking them for playing it, that it was made exclusively for getting a bunch of views on YouTube, and those people thought the ending was making fun of them. I personally thought the ending was really sweet. I thought it was a way to ease the suffering that had brought me to that point, to share in the experience of difficulty. Others thought it was a joke, that we ever thought Bennett Foddy had a plan for us and instead gave us a place to wallow in our own misery. How much you trust the author to have tried is really important. How much do we trust Mario 2 that it is giving us difficulty in good faith? Are the levels hard because they're more fun when they're super difficult? Or are they only hard because, haha, get owned you loser, Japanese 8-year-old in 1986? To learn this, we need to look into the development history of Mario 2. Contemporary interviews of the day. Wait, I don't speak Japanese, never mind. Versus Super Mario Bros. Is a game I bet most of you have heard of in passing, and then forgot about. This was a version of the original Famicom Super Mario Bros. That was released in arcades, only in America. And as an arcade game, it was made with arcade sensibilities. Mainly, make it way harder so you die more often, so you have to put in more quarters and spend more and more of your money. Shigeru Miyamoto said that making levels for Versus Super Mario Bros. Was so fun that the team decided to just have fun making Mario 2. It took only a few months to make because it was just a cool level pack, and the levels were made because they were fun to make. Some levels from Versus were actually included in Mario 2. So there's our answer. Mario 2 was made for fun and not for quality. The developers were not acting in good faith. They were acting in their own self-interest. But the issue is, of course, that these are very smart people with very serious intentions. Many developers have made ROM hacks of their own projects after the fact, and if they didn't care about audience acceptance, then they wouldn't have distributed this game all across Japan. Nevertheless, given it the title of Super Mario Bros. 2, instead of a more appropriate title for the kind of project this was, like Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. And if the game was made with so little care, it wouldn't be so polished. That might seem like a strange thing to say given the aforementioned wonky physics, but this game follows all of the classic game design rules. Let's go to 2-1 for an example. This is a big spring. It appeared in Super Mario Bros. 1 and bounced you a little high. The developers, of course, knew that you knew that this bounces you a little high, and because the game is funny, it instead bounces you really high. This is a joke the game played where they can laugh with the player. It's completely harmless because you way overshoot where you otherwise would have landed and makes something unremarkable a memorable moment. This super spring, as the wiki calls it, is brought back in 3-1, and it's probably something you've been waiting for me to mention. In Mario 1, people always dreamed of jumping over the flagpole. What secrets would await beyond the boundaries of the level? And 3-1 finally reveals it when there is a super spring shortly before the flagpole. You jump on it and decide to fly straight past it. Your dream's finally fulfilled, and you find a warp zone. What a splendid, spectacular secret. It takes you to World 1. You can either go down the pipe, or just kill yourself in the pit. In this case, it is a joke on the player, and whether or not it made you smile depends on whether or not you take yourself seriously enough to get upset over losing a single life. In World 3-3, it acts as a way to leap over much of the level. Now that it's been demonstrated in a variety of scenarios, and the player is acquainted with its physics and how long it keeps you in the air, the super spring can play a more critical role. Let's jump all the way to World 7-3, one of the last levels in the game. This level utilizes these super springs, and the player's familiarity with them, to great effect, forcing the player to platform over vast pits. It might seem unfair because you can't see your player, but by now you have definitely acquired the muscle memory to beat this level easily. On top of that, ever since the very beginning of Mario 1, you've understood that the screen advances only when Mario is at the center of it, so you can still tell where Mario is horizontally, with vertically being intuition. This is game design. This is fair, this is fun, and it's a memorable sequence. So the game is good, right? Let's look back at our chain of questions. The question, is Mario 2 good, is actually the question, is Mario 2 fun? And the question, is Mario 2 fun, is actually the question, does Mario 2 instill in the player a sense of progression and accomplishment through its mechanics? And does the moment-to-moment gameplay make the player feel this through their actions? And that question was just answered, right? Unless we're missing something. Okay, I'll stop cherry picking. Let's look back at the quote we started this video with. When you just don't know where to go. When the game stops being about platforming and starts being about, where do I go, what the hell bro, just let me progress. The first instance of invisible blocks being necessary to progress is in World 2-2, a level from Versus Super Mario Bros. There's a pipe up there, you're down here. There isn't a floor over there, so spend like 10 seconds floundering. This is a new game mechanic. It was used in Mario 1 8-4 for the final pipe taking you to Bowser. The player is expected to know that Invisiblocks are sometimes going to be necessary. This is building on a mechanic from the game's predecessor. It's not a very good mechanic, but it would be hard to say that this isn't fair, just boring. Next time is 3-4. Let's see it. 3-4 is a castle that starts with a maze segment, like the castles in Mario 1 and the ghost houses in every game after the NES. But this maze is cruel. You take each path, top, upper mid, etc. But none of them work. The lowest path is only 1 block high. Surely, you say, I'm not expected to go down there. But then you realize that this piranha plant is always respawning. So you sacrifice your power-up to go to the next area. This is good design. It makes the player feel clever and makes it so that you have to face Bowser at the end as Small Mario, giving the boss fight more stakes. And the boss fight having more stakes makes it all the more satisfying when you beat it. And it kind of does feel like your choice. Good job, Mario 2. But before you fight Bowser, there's another looping maze. This time there are 3 paths, but the top path is just barely out of reach. You try and try to make that jump, but then give up, which is what I did when I was 12. But now I'm a smart 18-year-old. I know that this isn't impossible, and I know that this is not the first time an impossible jump has been solved with invisible blocks. This is bad design. Unlike the Invisiblock jump in 2-2, the player has no reason to believe that this jump is impossible. How close the jump is to being possible makes the player feel cheated when they realize they were wasting all that time trying to get it. This is just unfair design, and it's not even difficult. It's trying to be clever, but it fails because of the layout of the level. This is what a bad Mario 2 level looks like. So the question still remains, do the number of bad levels outweigh the number of good levels? And how much does a bad level weigh down the overall experience compared to a good level? Does Mario 2 feel more consistently good or more consistently bad? This is the question that we will use to determine the question, is it, as a whole, good. But on top of that, we need to consider how the game's arc feels. It's an adventure, a long journey. Does the game get better over time, worse over time, stay the same, look different? Does the player feel accomplished, or just like they're back where they began? You know what this calls for? An internet-friendly tier list. Let's organize every level in Mario 2 into a tier list. 1-1, solid first level, balanced, B tier. 1-2, I like the part where you're jumping on dropping platforms, very fun, S tier. 1-3, fast level, introduces air bloopers, kinda short, A tier. 1-4, fire bars are annoying but still good, C tier. 2-1, the star here is really fun to use, it's in a great spot. The super spring is funny, S tier. 2-2, forgettable, the Invisiblocks are cheap, D tier. 2-3, forgettable but solid, C tier. 2-4, forgettable, at least it's not a maze, C tier. 3-1, the super spring gag is hilarious and enough to make this S tier on its own. 3-2, water level, and an annoying one at that with weird physics and bloopers, D tier. 3-3, really fun to blast through and the white platforms make it unique, A tier. 3-4, literally made me quit playing the first time, D tier. 4-1, there's a normal spring instead of a super spring, C tier. 4-2, screw this hammer bro, he alone dropped it down to a C tier. 4-3, this blind paratroopa jump looks outwardly cheap, but I've never not landed on it, so it feels amazing. S tier. 4-4, pretty generic castle level with some tricky but fair jumps. A tier. 5-1, this is the first level to use wind. It's really long and clearly very pleased with itself. It has 2 fake out stairs and then the actual flag is behind a massive wall with easy Invisiblocks. B tier. 5-2, the warp zone here takes you to World 8, and it's really cleverly hidden, A tier. 5-3, this level has a gimmick where it loops until you enter the warp pipe at the top using the 2 paratroopers as platforms. It gives you infinite tries because it loops, but the physics are weird, but it still is a fun puzzle, so A tier. 5-4, really fun to blast through and challenging because of the fire bars, but fair, A tier. 6-1, wind returns, B tier. 6-2, water returns, D tier. 6-3, the cheeps are never a threat, but there are so many of them, it's funny, B tier. 6-4, another maze, but it leads to a lot of waiting because of the long fire bar, B tier. 7-1, there are a lot of leaps of faith, but the wind makes them easy, B tier. 7-2, another looping level where you bounce on paratroopas to get to a pipe, less fun the second time, and another paratroopa jump that's really inconsistent, until I rewinded and found that there was a platform that just wasn't spawning. It's not the level's fault as much as the Famicom, but still, D tier. 7-3, the wind at night is really pretty. I like the color scheme a lot. This is when the game starts to pick up as it starts to wrap up, and the super springs are really fun to bounce on. It feels fair because you're the one who pushes your luck by trying to clear 2 once. A tier. 7-4, I like the scrolling platforms and dislike the low ceilings, B tier. 8-1, fair paratroopa jumps, the wind weaving in and out, fair and fun. except this paratroopa jump, which brings it down to a C from how unfair it is. 8-2. Another looping section, but really fun because you have to hit a brick instead of land on a pipe, which summons a vine, which takes you to the clouds, and you finish the level in the clouds. It's so cool and unique and breathtaking. It's the first time you ever have a castle in the clouds. It feels appropriately grandiose and dramatic for this late in the game. S tier. 8-3. A ton of incredibly tight jumps if you're blasting through. It feels wonderful. The Invisiblocks in the castle walls are cheap, but they're funny, so I'll let it slide just this once. And they're used to reach a scale platform. Beautiful. S tier. 8-4. It starts with a jump where you have to wrap around. You have to do more wraparound jumps later to prove how well you know Mario's movement. It feels like a real test of skill. A final paratroopa boss and then 2 Bowsers really heighten the tension. An excellent finale, but still a maze, so A tier. But there are more levels. Those that are even more lost. Beating the game without using warp zones unlocks the Fantasy World 9, inspired by the Minus world that was in the Famicom version of Mario 1. Miyamoto said it inspired such awe and wonder that it needed to be included in Mario 2 as a reward for your total mastery of the game. I wouldn't judge these levels because they're a completion award, but I would say that they are definitely worth experiencing in the original Famicom version on Nintendo Classics, instead of the Super Mario All-Stars remake that changed the levels to use normal colors, completely ruining the whole point. 9-4 is a standout. Instead of being interesting color-wise, it simply says, thank you. When you stop exploring World 9, the game gives you the message. You truly are a super player. God, I love video games. If you don't tear up at stuff like this, then I don't trust you as a person. And then there are even more. Worlds A through D, all unlocked by getting 8 stars on the title screen by beating the game 8 times, and then on top of that, holding the A button while pressing start. No, I am not joking. These 16 levels are all really fun. This is Mario 2's version of a hard mode. Mario 1 had the new quest where every Goomba was replaced with a Buzzy Beetle, but Mario 2 has this kind of compressed version of the original game. Push the 8-world game into 4 harder worlds that follow the same progression. It's like Celeste's B-Sides. And, like Celeste's B-Sides, it does a very good job of instilling the player with a sense of progression. Playing through these levels feels powerful, except for C-3 and C-4 for specific reasons. This adds 14 levels to S tier and 2 to D tier. I think this is one of the only games where I'd say 100%ing it gives a better experience than just playing it once. So does that make it good? 6 out of 10. Yeah, that's fair. I think it's worth playing, but you know, it's obviously not the best game out there. It's no new Super Mario Bros. That's for sure.